What are some unexplainable events or phenomenon that you've observed in real life? This happened to me a couple of years ago when there still used to be smoking compartments in trains. Some friends and I were going home by train when me and a friend decided to go for a cigarette. When we were on our way to the smoking compartment, we suddenly found ourselves in a part of the train that didn't look like anything we'd ever seen before. Everything from the grounds, the seats to the ceiling was chrome. What made it even stranger, this part of the train was packed with old people, and by old, I mean 80 years plus, and we could smell them. It's not that they smelled unwashed or anything like that, but just old, like the kind of smell you get in a retirement home. The people were just sitting there, staring at us. None of them spoke a word while we made our way through the compartment, but they all looked at us as if we were ghosts. We left the compartment and got back in the normal part of the train again, where my friend and I both realized that we experienced exactly the same and just how surreal that was. We smoked a cig and decided to go back to our other friends and were pretty nervous about going through that strange part again. However, this time, the train was completely normal, no sign of chrome or any old people at all. The most frustrating part was that none of the other guys believed a word of what we said when we explained them our strange experience and said we either made it up or smoked some crazy stuff. There have been rumors of a ghost where I work from before I started here, like hearing steps, and one time, the girls at administration had to work late and they swear someone knocked really hard at their door, even if there was nobody else at the time. I've had to stay overnight alone a few times and haven't heard anything that I couldn't explain by either the wind or noises from outside or from neighbor houses. One day though, at about 5 p.m., I was working next to two other people. Next to the office I work in, there's another office with a bathroom inside that's only used by my boss and his wife. She works in the company's finances on another office on the other side of the house. We usually know that if the door is closed, it means one of them is in the bathroom. That day the door was closed, but I didn't remember seeing anyone getting in, but was really concentrated in what I was doing, so didn't pay any attention to it. At one point, I turn around to ask something to the other people with me when the door's handle wiggles like if someone on the other side was trying to open a locked door. Does it 2 more times and then the door opens. At this point, we were looking at the door waiting for my boss or his wife to come out, but nobody does. I go check and sure enough, the office and bathroom were both empty. When my parents got divorced, my mom moved into a brand new house with me and my 3 siblings. I was the oldest and got my own room. One night, pretty soon after we moved in, I was lying on my side, trying to fall asleep. I was just staring at my new furniture, which had been a birthday present. One of the pieces had a full-length mirror on the front, and between blinks, I suddenly found myself staring at a little-ish blonde girl, probably 9, wearing a pink fancy dress, admiring herself in the mirror. She was moving slightly, just to sort of fluff out the skirt and have her ringlets bounce. We didn't interact at all. She just stood there and was gone a few moments later. Thinking I was hallucinating, dreaming, and not being terribly disturbed by it, I never really talked about it. I just never slept with my back to that side of the room. Flash forward about 5 years later. My dad had taken us camping with his wife, her kids and a family friend. We're all talking around the campfire about the freaky things we've experienced in our lives, and my younger sister starts telling a story about the house we used to live in with our mom. She'd since moved to a new house. In her story, she walked into her closet to get something and had seen a girl playing with some toys that had been left in the closet. They exchanged a look, but it wasn't scary, and my sister closed the door, and that was it. Immediately, I'm getting goosebumps, although it could have been because we were camping in January. I ask my sister about the girl's appearance, and before I know it, we're finishing each other's sentences about her hair, her age, her clothes, the feeling of odd calm we both experienced. It was just freaky. After we were done, everyone around the campfire was convinced we were just the best storytellers ever, and we'd set the whole thing up. If only we were that good. Shortly after my wife and I got married, we were spending Thanksgiving with her parents and her brother and sister. I went to sleep at night and had this crazy flurbo-up dream about a farmhouse with a store in it that had a chicken coop in the back of the house, and behind the chicken coop, there was one of those old-time wells like a wishing well. I walked out back and was drawn to the well like it was pulling me like a black hole, and there were these green monster things coming out of it that were obviously trying to end me. It was incredibly vivid, and it scared the flurbo out of me to the point that I bolted awake and was drenched in sweat. I hardly ever have nightmares, so it really stuck out in my mind. That morning at breakfast, I told the family the story, and as I was telling it, I noticed that my wife, her brother, and her sister turned white as fleabing sheets, and the parents got this really strange look on their face as well. I asked what the deal was, and they said that I had just perfectly described a recurring nightmare that all three of them had as children, and then my in-laws went and dug out an old photo album that had pictures of the exact house, store, chicken coop, and water well in the backyard. It was the house my mother-in-law grew up in, and she swore up and down that it was haunted. I had never heard that story, never seen those pictures, and didn't know a single thing about it, and yet, somehow I exactly described it to them. We all thought it was pretty crazy that I had the same nightmare they did when they were growing up. So my uncle, I'll call him Kyle, and my aunt, Jenny, and these are actual names, were moving out of my grandmother's house because they finally had the money to do it and had a child on the way. They moved into a little house in a place called Little Russia in Topeka, Kansas, which is a place where Russian immigrants migrated to in whatever time or wherever. It's next to a bridge, a small 4-block neighborhood with tiny houses. Anyways, while Jenny was pregnant with their first and only child, she took maternity leave for 3 to 4 months before her daughter was born, while Kyle continued working. She was alone in this house for most of the days and started hearing things in their cellar basement, which was really a trap door in the middle of their kitchen that leads to a dug-out cellar sort of thing, dirt on the walls, sometimes foundation, dirt floor, that sort of thing. She was hearing movement and motion, the common things that can be easily explained by water pipes and gas heaters and whatnot, but she was absolutely convinced that there was someone living in their cellar. Kyle told her fairly frequently that she was going crazy and there was no one in the cellar, but she wouldn't budge on her opinion, and so it went for the next month or two. Finally, they had their daughter and brought her back home after a few days in the hospital. The first night back, she unsurprisingly cried, like babies do. Kyle and Jenny were woken by it and decided they would let her cry it out for a minute to see if she would go back to sleep without intervention. Their bedroom door swung open, crashing against the wall, and they heard footsteps go around their bed, gently push open the door to their daughter's room, and heard their daughter giggle while the airplane ornament that jingled when wound up began playing. At first they were stunned and unable to get out of bed to check on her, but eventually they did. They found her asleep, with the ornament winding down to the end of its song. From this point, these occurrences were incredibly common. Rarely was it because of their daughter crying anymore, it was more as a playful activity. When Kyle got out of the shower, he would suddenly feel incredibly cold in the middle of summer in their smarmy, hot house. He yelled, "Enough!" which caused the bathroom door to open, shut, and an unhappy ghost march out of the bathroom. During the 7 months after their daughter was born that they lived there, their 3 dogs would occasionally stand up and follow apparently nothing around the house to a door, or car keys would get misplaced. None of this fazed Kyle or Jenny anymore, it was like living with a 5-year-old that they couldn't see. One day it got out of hand. They decided they were done living there, as they could afford a new house in a better, more suitable neighborhood, hopefully devoid of the supernatural, and were planning on renting out the house. In order to do this, they first replaced the door. Enter me and my other uncle Chris, who are both very realistic and think the idea of ghosts are just silly. We arrived to help put in a new door, me because I happened to be spending the weekend with my uncle, him because he's a carpenter by trade and helps the family with these tasks. About halfway through taking off the door, we hear a door open and shut. The house was empty aside from us 3 in the back bedroom and decided it might be the wind. Kyle, of course, knew better, but Chris and I weren't worried about it. We got the door off and put it against the wall outside when I saw the most unbelievable thing I've ever seen. Chris's toolbox, which we were pulling hammers screwdrivers out of, had been lifted off of the porch, carried a foot suspended by nothing, and thrown off the deck, sprawling all of the various tools onto the lawn. What the flurbo? I've since re-evaluated what I consider realistic and have become more agnostic than anything, with a healthy serving of collective unconscious Alakarliang, plus the idea of the connected mind being the universe and us creating everything around us. 1. When I was a kid, I woke up in the middle of the night to see an old man, probably in his 50s or 60s, short, slim, balding. He was standing in the doorway, saying something about the treasure of the brotherly seas. I was like, oh snap, WTF. I pushed my face into the pillow, and when I looked back, there was nothing there. I could swear this wasn't a dream, and he didn't look like anyone I knew. 2. When I was about 20, sitting in my room in the middle of the night, I kept seeing something black and later white in the corridor, just at the edge of my vision. When I looked there, I couldn't see anything. This repeated itself a few times, and finally I saw a huge black and white figure. It had to have been more than 3 meters in height because it didn't fit into the room. It only blinked and disappeared. I freaked out and didn't go to sleep till 7 to 8 a.m.